Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 32.
Congratulations, you showed up. Give yourself a high five in celebration of your success. Welcome to the Cashflow Diary, where new and experienced investors come to take confident action towards their goals. Your host is a family man, a real estate entrepreneur, investor, coach, and instructor. As a master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow 101 game, he's inspired many to begin their journey into creating cash flow for themselves and their family. And now, here he is to offer you the tools required to earn the income desired. Your cash flow coach, Jay Massey.
Well, hello there. Glad that you are here right now. And you probably have guessed from the title of this particular episode that we've got a special guest. And definitely I want to get to that as quickly as humanly possible. A couple of things to go through, though. If this is the first time you've heard of us, feel free to go download the first episode to understand a little bit more about how the Cashflow Diary podcast works, a little bit more about my beginning in real estate, if that's something that interests you as well. And let's always remember that you can go over to learninvestingnow.com to get your free e-course on learning how to begin to do real estate using none of your own money or credit. Now, with all of that being said, one of the things that I've never directly done on this particular podcast is asks for you guys to do business with me in a very direct manner. I'm going to change that for this particular episode. I want you to go over to cashflowdiary.com/forsale, FORSALE. Have a few duplexes under contract right now that I'm just looking to get rid of. I tend to know that if I can make it easy for new people to get started or existing people to get past the, Fannie and Freddie limits, I like to be able to do that. So it just happens to be a unique opportunity at the time where I can offer seller financing on duplexes with a reasonable price that should cash flow and relatively long-term seller financing at that. So feel free to go over cashflowdiary.com/forsale. Look at the duplexes. If you like them, great. If you don't, no big deal. Tell a friend, maybe. That would also be very, very appreciated as well. But I'm just kind of curious to see who out there listening wants a piece of U.S. real estate and, more importantly, is willing to take some action. All right, let's get on with this particular episode. We start with our quote. And it is, you have made some mistakes. And you may not be where you want to be, but that has nothing to do with your future. I'll say that again. You have made some mistakes. And you may not be where you want to be, but that has nothing to do with your future. That comes to us from Mr. Tom Ziglar himself. Now, as you probably know, Tom Ziglar is the CEO of Ziglar Incorporated, and he's also the special guest that we have for this particular episode. And we'll get to that interview and what he and I were talking about here in just a second. Well, let me ask you this. I like the definiteness of what was said. You have made some mistakes. All of us have made mistakes. I made major mistakes today alone. I make mistakes probably daily, hourly. If you ask some, you probably could do a stopwatch between my mistakes, right? I don't know. But you have made them. But that has nothing to do with your future. And you may not be where you want to be, but that also has nothing to do with your future. Both of those things, making mistakes and not being where you want to be, have everything to do with your past. And one of the greatest things that I enjoy about being an American citizen or just, able to wake up with new perspectives is that you get the opportunity to wake up today. Those of you listening to my voice today, you got a shot at a new perspective. And in everything that happened today or yesterday or an hour before or even just before you started playing the podcast has nothing to do with your future. Those are great things for me. And I find lots of encouragement from that. So just keep that in mind. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to jump right in to the interview. Now, I warn you, we're probably going to go past our normal show limit, because you know what happens when I start interviewing people. We just start talking, and I want to make sure that you get as much information out of it as you possibly can. So I don't want to cut it and cut something out that could be the very thing that you needed to hear. So anyway, here's what we're going to do. We're going to play it. Then if you need to, feel free to take a break, because we'll still got to do our cash flow question, as you know. Let those of you know who won the book. And then we're going to also ask another question. So we'll have a break towards the middle, and we'll do the rest of the interview as well. So here we go. Today with me, I have a very special guest, and many of you, you know his name, but you may not have met him before. And the thing is, I'm definitely glad, he's here and he's taken the time. And understand this: one of the most major important things about real estate investing isn't so much about the real estate in the location and the building and all those things. It's about the people and the people you help and the people you can employ and just importantly, the mindset that's required to go behind all of that. And you may have heard me say this before. I'll say it again. You will never out-earn your personal growth. And one of the most important things for all of us as real estate investors is to focus on personal growth. And there are many individuals out there that have had impact, I know, on me and possibly on you, and when it comes to your personal growth. And today I have with me the proud son of Mr. Zig Ziglar himself. And I know that I have been able to hear and to just assimilate the information from years, I guess, of listening. And what's amazing to me is that now I get to actually talk to someone related to him. And I'm excited that you're here, Tom. If you could you just kind of tell us a little bit about, some of the simplest things that you possibly have learned from your father?
You bet. Well, Jay, it's great to be here. And for those of you who don't know Zig Ziglar, he was my father. He passed away just about a year ago. And he was 86 years old, and he had an amazing life. And in fact, he set a long-term goal to one day be in heaven, and so that's where he is now. So Dad is always a goal achiever.
Nice.
And he spoke hope and encouragement into people's lives, and let, no matter who you were or where you were, he let you know that you had the ability to change who you are and what you are just by changing what goes into your mind. We all are a product of all the things that have come into us, the words that were spoken, what we took in, what we believed. And I kind of translated that into a short quote, and my quote is, "What you feed your mind determines your appetite." So the good news is, if you're not happy with who you are or where you are right now, that's okay. You can change it. There's time to do that. Dad, in his life, we estimated that he impacted over 250 million people, 32 books sold, tens of millions of audio tapes and CDs and downloads, and throughout the world, speaking just everywhere, just an incredible outreach. And everything that he taught, everything that he believed, was based on these two key things. I asked Dad, I said, what was, in your mind, what is it that's made you so successful? And number one was character and integrity. And number two was the concept of persistent consistency. And persistent consistency is the Zig Ziglar word for work ethic.
Nice.
So consistency means if there's something worth having, then you should do whatever it takes to get it every single day or as often as necessary. That's being consistent. You set a goal and you consistently go after it. Persistency means that while you're going after it, you're continually raising your game. You're changing it up just a little bit. So the example there is if you're working out, your goal might be to work out 5 times a week. That's consistency. Persistency would be doing a little bit more or a little bit something different every time you worked out. Adding a minute on the treadmill or adding in weights or something like that. And when you're consistent and persistent, then not only are you doing what you need to do to get there, but you're getting there at a faster and faster rate. So those are the foundations that he did everything with. He had this unbelievable character, passion to make a difference in people's lives, and just that work ethic that just was unstoppable.
Right. Now, you said you estimate, or you're estimating. Now, you're in the position as the CEO, so you would know, or at least you guys are estimating 250 million people influenced over the course. Now, that sounds like some enormous shoes to fill for me. How on earth did you even put yourself, go, okay, I can, let's just step in and do this?
That's an awesome thing, an awesome question to ask, and I'm going to answer it in two ways. I've been working, well, I tell people I've been in the business 48 years. I was literally born into it.
Right.
Right, but officially over 25 years, and as the CEO and president, over 18 years. And so I've always been kind of the behind-the-scenes guy and, creating the platform for everybody else to go out and be successful and, doing the promoting. And when Dad would go and speak and things like that, we would make sure that everything was great at home base and so on. And so the standards are so high because when you're talking about having the right kind of attitude and doing everything within character and making trust your number one value and all these things, it means that you've got to carry yourself at a very, very high level. Because right out of the gate, people expect a lot. And that really wasn't difficult. That's just how we were raised and we grew up. Those were our core values. So that's not the difficult. The difficult thing for me was people would say to me, they would say, "Hey, Tom, why don't you come and speak? Or why don't you get out and speak more?" And I'm just not wired that way. At least I thought I wasn't.
Right.
Right. And so about 4 or 5 years ago, I started really thinking about that because I'm kind of a nerd. I kind of think a lot. And then I realized, hey, wait a second. It was in my own head. I thought that people would think if I went and spoke, that I would be just like Dad. I'd have the same style, the same personality, the same voice. And then I realized nobody thinks that. I'm the only one who thinks that.
Right.
What I realized is that people wanted to hear from me. And my obligation was to give them the best version of me possible. And Dad always told me this. This is the messaging he gave me, and this is a great message for parents with kids, and especially if your kids ever come work in your business. When I would ask Dad, what should I do with my life? He'd said, son, do whatever you're called to do. Do whatever you want to do. But whatever you do, just do it with 100% integrity and 100% effort.
Yeah.
Right? And so it goes back to those two things that made him successful, integrity and persistent consistency. So he was telling me, look, I'm going to be behind you. God's built you in a certain way. You've got a certain gifts and talents and desires, and you need to follow that. And as parents, that's awesome because if you have more than one child, they're completely different. So,
yes, I do.
Right.
4.
They're all different.
Yes.
So what's right for one isn't right for the other one, right?
No, it's the exact opposite. What's right for one is painful to the other one. You're like, go figure.
So what they do is, that's total choice. How they do it is where we should focus, and the kind of person they are, the kind of character they have, because their gifts are going to be unique. And so once I got in my own head, even though I never learned it at home, I thought people would want me to speak and have kind of the same style as Dad. But now I go out and people come up to me when I'm done and they say, wow, that was awesome. I'm so glad you were yourself.
Nice.
And but think about it. If you're trying to be somebody else, they're not going to believe you anyway.
No.
Because people are too smart. They see that anyway.
Well, in that situation, you didn't even believe you for a while, but you learned to, I guess, as some would say, you had a case of stinking thinking.
Yeah.
And then you got that, you needed a checkup from the neck up, and then you got that straight, which is good. Right. And that's amazing to me because one of the reasons I even started the cash flow diary was because my children are 16, 5, 4, and 2 at the moment. And the youngest is 2. And I said to myself, how can I make sure if something happens to me between now and the time that they're ready, that they know what I thought, they know how I felt, they know how to carry on with the business, et cetera, et cetera. And I figured chronicling it and journaling it was in this format would be one of the ways to do so. So for me, it's a special treat to hear from you because you are in essence what I'm preparing for, I guess, in a situation like this. So I find that I find it very, very interesting for me that you still have some of those things that many of us all have, when it comes to public speaking or not wanting to do or saying that's not me. We often say that's not me in many different ways and limit ourselves in various different forms. So, there's this story about a bicycle salesman out there, and I don't know if you remember it, or if I would love it if you could, kind of tell us what you learned or heard and understand from that particular story, if possible.
Okay, well, if I'm getting on the wrong story, you tell me. But
no problem.
In Dad's book, Secrets of Closing the Sale, he talks about the time when I was 12. He went and bought me a bike, and we went together. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, but when you're a kid, you get hooked on things, and boy, was I ever hooked on a bike. I was riding bikes everywhere. It was when BMX or bicycle motocross just started, and we were just kids. And back then, we didn't know what a helmet was. I'm surprised we're still alive, but
yes,
we would jump them and race them, and all that stuff. And so he asked what I wanted for Christmas, and I said I wanted a new bike that was really cool and everything. So we go to this bike shop, and it was the Bike Mark of Richardson, and we go in there, and there's a man, turned out to be the manager. He was there alone, and he was helping a lady, looked like a grandmother, and her 5 or 6 year old granddaughter. And the manager looked at Dad and said, "Sir, it'll be just a few minutes." So he was helping them, and of course Dad's watching this whole thing, and the lady said, "I want this bike right here for my granddaughter." And the little girl back then, that's still today, I guess, the little girl was off riding the bike around the store. You know how that is. Mm-hmm. And so the manager said, "Oh, that's a great choice. Let's call your granddaughter over and see if she fits." So the granddaughter comes over. She gets on this bike, and she doesn't, it's too big for her. Her feet don't really touch the ground. She has a hard time grabbing the handlebars. She's kind of unstable on it. And the manager says, "Well, this is a great bike, but the frame is just a little too big. But the good news is that the bike that your little girl or your granddaughter was riding around the store, that's the same bike as this. It's just a little bit smaller. I think that would be perfect for her. Let's see if it fits." And the grandmother said, No. The bike right here is the one I want. It's the same as the neighbor girl next door. I want her to have the same bike." And the manager kind of looked at her and said, "Well, ma'am, the bike that she was riding is the same bike. It's just smaller. It's just a little different color, but it's the same bike. And she fits on it a lot better." And the grandmother said, "No, I want this bike right here." And the manager said, "Well, ma'am, I'm sorry. That bike's not safe. If she went into the street, she wouldn't be able to stop. And if a car was coming, well, I just couldn't live with that." And he said, "Ma'am, I'd love to sell you that bike, but I can't." Well, that lady, believe it or not, the grandmother, she got mad and just left. And Dad witnessed that whole thing. And so the manager came up to Dad and said, "How can I help you?" And Dad just looked at him and said, "Get my boy a bike, whatever he wants."
Totally.
Right. And so because he knew that he could trust this man.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so what an incredible story that became, because when we do things in the right way, even though it seems like, temporarily it's costing us the sale, the Richardson Bike Mark is still growing and going today. I mean, it's still in operation. So that's over 35 years ago.
Right.
That happened. Man, talk about legacy.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think one of the things that I often tell people, or I've said before, is business moves at the speed of trust. And
Yep.
that's exactly what that is. It's that salesperson had complete integrity throughout. Yes, he's still a salesperson who wants to earn money, that, or sell a product so that he can earn money for his family, but not at the cost of his conscience. And
Right.
one of the things that I find very interesting, and I think you would have a unique perspective on this. I've often told people that there's a simple verse in the Bible where Jesus simply says, "Let your yes be yes and no be no." I said, and I tell people that is by far one of my largest and biggest business competitive advantages on the planet. What would you say to that?
Absolutely. We're really good friends with Seth Godin, and of course he's a marketing genius. And we were doing an interview with him. He was in our offices, and I've done some research, and we talk occasionally. And Seth has written so much about trust, and he made this comment. He said, "We live now in the connection economy. It's not the industrial age. It's not technology anymore. It's connection." Because when you think about social media and everything that's going on, and he said this. He said the number one commodity in the connection economy is trust. The number one commodity in the connection economy is trust. And his number one business value is to build trust in every transaction. So his focus is the scalability of trust. He's learned that the more trust he builds, everything else follows.
Yep, totally get it.
He's not first concerned with revenue or bottom line, it's trust.
Makes perfect sense. I mean, and that's the thing that I'm hoping you're hearing as you're listening is that is the fundamental concept of business, and it's definitely the fundamental concept behind lots of real estate transactions. What have you. The seller needs to trust that you can close. The renter needs to trust that you can keep the property in a clean, safe, affordable living condition. You've got to learn to trust your renters. You've got to trust your buyers. You've got to trust the realtors, and all of these things are what go in to becoming a successful investor, have you into developing cash flow. And this is why, we also must take time to learn from others outside of our industry. You've heard him mention already, Seth Godin as another place to learn, but you've also learned a very important thing is you can learn from just examples and watching other people. And one of the things I love to do, I don't know about you, Tom, but I love to go around and I actually watch other salespeople to see how they handle situations and what they're doing in order to, serve and service the customer. I'm looking for that person who exhibits trust because that's who I want to deal with. Do you ever do anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're always looking for stories and examples of that we can use. I remember Dad had an example, a guy named Lee Kaching, and I think he was from Singapore or Hong Kong. But back in the 80s, he was a multi-billionaire, and I guess he was a huge, he would acquire huge projects and tracts of land and developments, and he was teaching his son the business. And his son came to him and basically said, "Dad, I negotiated a deal. 10% would have been fair, but I was able to negotiate 12% ownership for us. They were going to finance it." And the father just looked at him and said, "Son," and most people would think that's good, but let's give them 9% instead of taking 12. Let's take 9 instead of taking 12.
Yeah.
And his son just looked at him and said, "Why?" And he said, "Because we want to be known as the group that when they see a good deal, treat people more than fair. That way, the good deals come to us. We don't have to go looking for them."
I promise I'm laughing because my listeners are going to be thinking, did I set you up to say that? Because I tell them all the time, I'm that guy when the realtor, I just did this in a house in Atlanta where the realtor wrote the listing agreement and it came over at the standard 6% commission. I said, "This is great, but how about 7?" And he, And that in and of itself got his attention. And now I get way better service. And I do this with all of our vendors throughout all the entire business. And they're going to think that I literally asked you, like, planned you to say that ahead of time. And I'm just like, man, I don't want them to think that. It's all good.
Right. Yeah, because you know what your limit is? Your limit is your time.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And so it's nothing to give a little bit more when all of a sudden it pays dividends in time, because now they bring you the ready-made best golden opportunities.
Exactly. Because now my marketing costs, so on the other end, my marketing cost to find that next deal, to find that next investor, to find whatever, goes like to zero because I didn't have to do it. It was brought to me. And
right.
those what you just said is another yet example in a completely different industry that says the same thing. And it starts with that. But in order to do that, though, you must be a certain type of person. You must believe a certain way. You must have a certain bent when it comes to helping and working with other people. What types of information do you think you've either learned, now being, the face, or if you will, or the over at Ziglar Incorporated, or what did you learn from your dad that helped you to be able to assimilate that way of thinking into how you continue to practice business today?
Well, first, just having the ultimate role model. Dad truly lived a worry-free, fearless life. And he did that because of a couple of things, but the main one was he realized a long time ago that there was only one person that he had to please, and that was the Lord. Mm-hmm. That was God. And so that responsibility meant that he had to continue that relationship with the Lord, and then he had to speak the truth in love. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the cool thing. When you speak the truth in love, and believe me, a lot of people use the truth as a weapon.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just being able to share with people what they need to hear and the way they need to hear it. And then you have that understanding that the way people receive it, that's up to them.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
We're not in a popularity contest.
No.
We're in a, I think Dad would say we're in a significance difference-making contest. Mm-hmm. And so when we start focusing on significance rather than success, because the definitions, while they're similar, they're also very different. Success is what I can do for me. Significance is what kind of impact can I have in your life? How can I help you become who you want to become? When we, just seeing how significance-focused Dad was, and then the benefits for that. I mean, I'll just tell you just a quick story. I remember many times Dad would come home from the road, 2 or 3 cities in 3 or 4 days, speaking in each one. It could have been in his 60s or his 70s or even his 80s. And he'd walk through the door, and his body language, his shoulders would be slumped, and he would be physically tired. But he'd have this big grin, and emotionally he'd be filled up. He'd be charged up emotionally. And I used to think, how is it that Dad can put it all out there, even in his 70s and 80s, and be physically exhausted, but mentally and emotionally, going full speed, totally fulfilled, big smile. And then one day last year, it happened to me. I did 2 or 3 cities in a row, and I came home and walked through the door, and boy, was I tired physically, but mentally, man, it was emotionally, it was such a great trip. And then it hit me, the secret that he had. You see, he would prepare 3 or 4 hours every day, researching and studying and reading and writing on how to make a difference in somebody else's life. Wow. Well, when you do that, guess who benefits? You do.
Yeah.
And then you go teach somebody that. You go speak to them. When you give that speech, who besides the audience hears that speech? You do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're getting it again. And then when it comes back to you, people come up afterwards and they say, "Oh, thank you so much. That was great." Or I read your book, or your tapes that I got 25 years ago changed my life. Then you're getting filled up again. And that's how that inner sustaining drive and motivation keeps going. And so for people who are building their career, they're building their financial stability, they're building their portfolio, they're building a family, whatever it is, if you can take the things that you're learning as you grow as a person and as a professional, and then you start sharing that with those you love and care about and employees and team members, man, that's when it comes back to you, tenfold, is when you teach those things, because then they start giving the feedback of how it changed them. And so that was my model. And so now when things are going great, I kind of look for, the lessons in there. And when things aren't going great, I start looking for the lessons in there.
Right.
Because ultimately it's not about this situation right here. It's really about how we can make a difference down the road for somebody else.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly right. Because it was probably for me, it was about 2.5 years ago when I called myself, I going to retire for a little while. But I got very bored because I didn't have, and all I did for that summer was I played with remote control helicopters and learned photography. And I was like bored because I had nobody to quote unquote play with. And so I started teaching other people what I knew, started being more intentful or having more intent behind helping other people do it. It's like, and now things are going even bigger, better, faster, and I'm having way more fun than I've ever had doing what we're doing. And I'm just excited because I learned my own lessons, as you just said, time and time again. And because I get to speak and say it to crowds everywhere I go. And that's the same thing. And it's awesome. If you haven't figured it out already, one of the things that I want to make sure that it comes across is that Zig Ziglar was a very influential person for many, 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 many millions of people. So here's what we're doing. We obviously have, his son here today. And what we're also doing is we're interviewing as many people as we can find who have had results or who Zig's life has had an impact on. So if you want to send us something, an email or a little anything, because this is more or less a tribute to a man who's made a difference. And as you know now, a year ago, last November is when he passed away. So we've got future interviews for the next couple of weeks for some people. And I think you're going to know those names, you're going to know those people, and that's great. But I'm also kind of curious, about you. Did you listen to one of Zig's tapes, see you at the top, or anything of that nature? Is there something that he ever said to you via live on a tape or a CD or what have you, MP3 download that has made a difference in your business? I'm just kind of curious. Feel free to send that information in to cashquestion@cashflowdiary.com, or you can just call it in at 800-689-1764. That's why I was having trouble saying. I was like, something's not right. Anyway, 800-689-1764. If you just want to send something in that's nice, that you can remember about a meeting you had with Mr. Ziglar in any way, shape, or form, I think that would be cool. All right. Our cash flow question from last time was, what is the most common name for the period of time called between your offer being accepted and the actual close date? Well, the common name that we were looking for is, of course, due diligence. The due diligence period. It's where you're making sure, do I really want to buy this one? And if you say yes, then great. One thing I want to say about the due diligence period. Yes, you're making sure that you really want to buy it, and you should know that. But you should also know why you didn't buy. I often, when I get into contract, unless I come up with a reason to not buy, I'll end up buying it. What does that mean? When I say a reason to not buy, it means if you don't buy it, okay, and 10, 15 years goes by, and you go back, buy that property, and you look at it, and even if it made billions of dollars for the other person, you can still say, you know what, good for them, and I would have made my same decision today anyway. And if you can do that, then you know why you don't buy. So just keep that in mind. All right, this week's question. For those of you wondering, feel free to answer the question. You get a signed copy of the upcoming book, My Cash Flow Creation System, which literally goes through all of the things that I do between wholesaling and multifamily buildings and raising private capital, etc., so that you can learn how to do it yourself. So if you want, you can answer the question, send in your answer to, again, cashflowquestion@cashflowdiary.com, or call it in at 800-689-1764. This week's question: of the following ratios, now remember, a ratio is just a fraction, right? Of the following ratios, operating expense, debt service coverage, loan to value, and investment to value. So there's 4 ratios to choose from: operating expense, debt service coverage, loan to value, and investment to value. Which is the most important to pay attention to when your goal is to hold and develop a property long term for cash flow? Now, I'm also going to ask you why. What does that mean? I'm asking why specifically because if for some reason you believe differently than the answer I'm looking for and you come up with a good why, guess what? You're going to win too. So we can have multiple winners this time. And I just want to know, of the following ratios: operating expense, debt service coverage, loan to value, and investment to value, which is the most to pay attention to when your goal is to hold and develop a property long-term for cash flow, and why? All right. Now, you're probably tired of hearing me, or at least this segment, so let's go ahead and get right back to the rest of the time with Tom Ziglar. Now, I understand that your focus is on small business, and I think you might be willing to agree with me that small business is the backbone of our country, and I even say that we need the real estate entrepreneurs to stand up and solve this issue, which is part of the challenge. There's that's what I'm hopefully helping to have happen, one house at a time, one apartment at a time. What do you think it takes for a small business to succeed today?
Well, I 110% agree that small business is the backbone of this country. You can look at the economic charts over the years, and when big business is doing great or when big business is doing bad, it almost has no impact on the employment rate. But when small business is doing great, boy, unemployment goes way down. And when a small business is hurting, it goes way up. It's just our engine runs on small business. And the challenge today is that people who generally start small business, they are awesome as a technician or in one skill set in their business. And they usually, like Michael Gerber in the E-Myth said, they usually they have a entrepreneurial seizure and they start their business. They get mad and the boss, why is the boss getting all the money? I should go get all the money myself. And they start that business and they're really good at, putting signs in or cleaning windows or whatever their business is. But then all of a sudden they've got insurance and they've got to hire people and they got to advertise and they got to market and they got to sell and they got to have inventory. And so it's all the other aspects of the business that get them down. And so the key to a great business is that ability to systemize it. And it's not, don't spend your life learning, inventing things and learning your own way when there's so many systems that are already out there that you can just adopt. Shortcuts are huge. So you got to systemize the marketing, the sales, the operations, the administration, and even the leadership. You as the business owner, you're the leader.
Right.
And so you've got to systemize those things. You've got to use what's already working, proven things that are working, so that you can develop other people within your business to run the things that you're not very good at.
Right.
We're not all good at everything. So as we grow the business, as we systemize it, then things take off. And then there's the other side of that, which is a small business. Guess what? It's on your mind 24/7. So that means that your personal life, your family life, what kind of shape you're in, the mental diet that you're on, all those things are really important. So you got to have balance on the personal side as well. So, that's the key. one of our we do small business coaching. So if you're a small business owner, we work with small business owners to help them systemize what they do. But we were talking to an associate, and they got some advice from a billionaire. And this guy asked the billionaire, he said, you've bought and sold hundreds of businesses. What's your secret? And the billionaire said this. He said, build your business to sell, and then don't sell it.
Nice.
It's pretty simple.
Right. Yeah.
Well, why is that? Well, when somebody wants to buy your business, they want a turnkey operation. They don't want your job. They want something that's turnkey.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So build it to sell and then keep it.
Exactly. And that's because people, oh, wow, that's amazing. The fun part about that for me, and hopefully for those of you listening, is one of the things that I've personally been criticized for is that even when I had a single family house, just one, I had property management in place because I saw that as a job. There are many pieces of owning rental real estate that I see as a job and not my core strength. And I've built it so that anyone could step into my position. And I'm in the process of reverse engineering myself out of a lot of the positions so that other people can do them for that very reason. I have no reason to believe that any of my children would want to take over, but maybe if they do, great. If not, I can sell it to someone else. And that's an amazing thing to begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey would say, if that's the way to go. That makes perfect sense to me in so many ways. So with, everything that you guys got going on these days, with the transitions, new plans, all the speaking, what would you say is in store for Ziglar Incorporated? What can we look forward to either on, Ziglar.com or anywhere else in the future?
Well, a couple of things that are going great guns right now. Of course, at Ziglar.com, if you're, we have free gifts there that if somebody wants our newsletter, it's free. We have some downloads that are free. So we're always offering value there. Our Facebook page is just going nuts. The Zig Ziglar fan page is growing by about 4,000 or 5,000 likes a day. And it's a real interactive community. All the great quotes are there. And I think as far as Dad's legacy goes, because of social media and the internet and the things that we're doing, it's just getting bigger and bigger. I mean, we're literally tens of thousands of people every day are being touched that were never touched before. So that is exciting. We have a series that's free called the Ziglar Legacy Series. It's a series of free webcasts. We had Dave Ramsey on it yesterday. Seth Godin was on earlier this year. Coming up, we've got Ken Blanchard and Bob Bodine, and just some of the best in the world. And they all have one thing in common, why they're on this webcast, and that is that at some point in their life, they were impacted by Dad's material.
Right.
And now they're out in their own industry and their own expertise making a difference in other people's lives. So that is really going. And then we launched something brand new. In fact, next week is our first ever class. That's the first week in November. We sold it out just in a few days, but it's called Ziglar Legacy Certification Training. And we are actually certifying for the first time people to teach our core programs. So speakers, trainers, consultants, coaches who already have an audience and they want to teach the Ziglar goal setting, relationship building, and personal development programs, we're equipping them to do that. And that is a fulfillment of Dad's dream and mission, which is, to change the world. And as much fun as we have here in Plano, Texas, there's just not enough of us. We need help.
Totally. There's a lot of small business owners who are counting on that. I know some of the simplest things, some of the simplest concepts that you had the fortune of being born into it, as you said, born into the business. And if it wasn't for things like, tapes, back in the day, so to speak, I would have never heard, let alone CDs and MP3s and downloads and all this other stuff. But this information, yes, it needs to get out and go to more people because it's amazing what the human is capable of once someone has that kind of vision for us. And that's something that I would say that I believe your dad had, is he had vision for whomever he ran into.
Yep, he did. And he had this, I don't know what you call it, but this just ability to connect with people with, exactly what they needed to hear and the way they needed to hear it. And he would create hope immediately with somebody. And when you have hope, then you're willing to take action. And so action is what gets results. Just reading something isn't going to change it. You have to read it and then implement it. You have to put it in play. And so he would light that fire, give them hope. They would take action, and they would see the results. And people would, once they would try one thing and it worked, and they'd try the second thing and it worked, and they'd keep trying it. And they were, wow, this is pretty cool. It is amazing to me at how many people are operating under a false set of beliefs.
Yeah.
You said something earlier about, being generous. And one of Dad's good friends is a guy named Rabbi Daniel Lapin. And he said this, I don't know if it's a Jewish proverb or what, but he says that opportunity seeks out the generous.
Nice.
Right. And what he means is this, if you get an opportunity, like if somebody brings you an opportunity and you're unable to fulfill it because it's just out of your skill set, and they ask you, well, who do you know who can do this? Well, your first thought isn't some mean, miserly, rude person, is it?
No, not
Your first thought is somebody who you can trust, who is generous, who's going to handle it just right. So opportunity does seek out the generous.
Absolutely. I agree.
So, and I bet you've gotten referrals from some of those realtors who you're giving an extra percent to.
Not only that, I go so far as to tell people that the only stuff that you see on the MLS or any sort of website is the stuff that I said no to because they brought it to me first before they put it up there. Yeah. So yeah, definitely it works out quite well when you do business that way. So I like it a lot. Now at the end of the day, your father passed last November. He left an amazing legacy, affected millions of lives, but he was your father. What would you like people to remember most about him?
Oh my gosh. He loved the Lord, and he loved my mom. He was the same way 24/7. Just really the same way. He always saw it and thought the best of people. I never saw him discouraged. I've seen him sad, when we lost my sister. But never hopeless, never discouraged. He just knew. And like he used to say, he read the end, and he knew he won.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So,
that's a great thing to be remembered for, and want to be remembered for. Is there anything that you'd like to say to that person who's considering maybe getting involved in small business, becoming that real estate entrepreneur for the first time, looking at doing something different, striking out? They've been in corporate America for a while, and they know they're capable of more. What would you say to that person?
Oh, wow. First off is start right where you are. Even if you're burned out in a corporate job, you don't have to abandon ship to start your dream. There's a great book by John Acuff, and it says, it's called Quitter, but the subtitle is Start Your Dream Job While You're Still Working in Your Day Job. So, take that first step, do it now, get the education. And it doesn't have to be huge. It's not like, it's like, where do you want to be in 5 years? You don't have to accomplish that in the first 30 days. You just set a goal, and then you move towards it. I remember one time we were teaching a personal development class at a hospital. This was some years ago, and the trainer was actually a trainer that we trained at the hospital. His name was Dr. Bob. he gets on the elevator, and there's Johnny. And Johnny was the janitor, and Johnny was just whistling was grinning from ear to ear and whistling like crazy. And Dr. Bob said, "Johnny, why are you so happy?" And he said, "Dr. Bob," he said, "I'm buying a house this week, and it's all your fault." And Dr. Bob looked at him and said, "I don't know about a house." And Johnny said, "Yeah, about 5 weeks ago, you taught us how to set goals in class." He said, "I've been working here for 20 years, been renting the whole time. I never even knew that I could own a house, but I set a goal to buy a house." And the third and fourth questions on the goal setting chart was, what obstacles do I have to overcome, and what skills or knowledge do I have to acquire, and what people do I need to know in order to make this happen? And he said, "I realized that the thing that was keeping me from owning a house is I didn't know a banker who could give a loan. So I asked somebody in the class. So they introduced me. I went down and saw him. And guess what? I have no debt. I have enough for a 20% down payment. I have a 20-year track record of employment." He said, "Dr. Bob, I'm moving into a house next week for less money than I was paying in rent in a nicer neighborhood closer to the hospital. Dr. Bob, I got a house, and it's all your fault."
Yeah.
And so the key there is that whatever your dream is, the business you want to start or you want to grow, all you've got to really do is take that first step, set the goal, and then find the people, the knowledge, the resources, the education, the skills that you need to make it happen. That's it.
Absolutely. I mean, that couldn't be more perfect, because that's exactly how it happened for me. I mean, a few short years ago, as most of you already know, but for those of you that don't, my wife and I, we were technically homeless. She almost died 3 times. We had nothing from the worldly standpoint. And the only thing I had was the ability to set a goal and pursue it persistently and consistently to be able to make something happen for the family. And that's exactly what you've just heard him say. You heard him say, do that very thing. Start where you are. What you have today is irrelevant compared to what it is that you want to accomplish. You just have to begin. And then, as I've always said, once you start, stay started so that you can keep going in that direction. Is there anything else that you'd like to add here today? And just, by the way, I'd love to have you back anytime in the future. If you're open to being our guest again, that would be great. But is there anything else that you would like to add here today?
No, that's good. I think that's a pretty good there. Just at Ziglar.com, that's where we are. We're traveling everywhere, all over the world, online. We're here to help, and I'll just admit it. We need help. We got good news, and we need help getting it out. So anybody who goes and shares us on Facebook or Twitter, that would be awesome.
Well, I think we will definitely help you there with that immediately. So that's very, very good. For those of you listening, glad that you've been listening. Hopefully you've been able to glean some information as it relates to your particular mindset, and understand that oftentimes real estate is still about people. And there are many people you can learn from, many different industries, many different places. And clearly, Ziglar.com is one way to do it. I know it's made a difference for me simply because if you learn to help everybody else get what they want, you can have everything that you want. And as you continue to practice that in your business by giving more in use value than you take in cash value from any one person, and in every exchange, you never know where you might end up. You might end up one day talking to the very people that inspired you and not even know it. So with that, we definitely can't wait to hear from you again. Until next time.
Thank you for investing your time with Jay Massey and the Cash Flow Diary. When you have a moment, please visit iTunes and leave a positive comment about the show. And go now to our website, CashFlowDiary.com, to take advantage of our free business building course, Cash Flow Foundation. Gain the knowledge, understanding, and skill that will teach you how to never need a job again. Until next time.